I stood frozen in my childhood living room, staring at the wall of family photos that had once told our story. Now they told lies. Where I should have been, standing beside Trinity at her high school graduation, laughing with mom and dad at Christmas dinner, hugging grandma on her 80th birthday, there were only awkward gaps or carefully cropped edges. Someone had systematically erased me from our family's visual history. My name is Ainsley, and this is what betrayal looks like in the digital age. Not just stealing your husband, but photoshopping you out of existence. Sweetheart, you made it. Mom rushed forward to hug me, her perfume familiar and suffocating. We weren't sure you'd come. Almost didn't, I admitted, my eyes still fixed on the altered photos. Interesting redecorating you've done. Mom followed my gaze and had the decency to look uncomfortable. Oh, those... Trinity thought, well, she just wanted to pretend I never existed. The words came out sharper than I intended. Don't be dramatic, Ains. Dad appeared from the kitchen, trying to diffuse the tension with his trademark grin. Come have some coffee. Your sister should be here soon. With Marshall? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The silence was confirmation enough. I followed them to the kitchen, where the table was set for 6, the perfect nuclear family they'd become without me. The morning sun streamed through the windows, highlighting the fresh flowers and pristine tablecloth. Everything looked perfect, just like the doctored photos. How's work? Dad asked, pouring coffee into my favorite mug. At least they'd kept that. Good. Really good, actually. The front door opened and familiar voices drifted in. My stomach clenched. We're here. Trinity's sing-song voice called out. Sorry we're late. I gripped my mug tighter as they entered the kitchen. Trinity, my baby sister, looking effortlessly beautiful in a floral dress. And Marshall, my ex-husband, now her husband, wearing the watch I'd given him for our first anniversary. Ainsley. Trinity's smile faltered slightly. You came. Apparently I'm the only thing that can't be edited out of real life. Marshall at least had the grace to look away. Trinity's face flushed. I don't know what you're talking about. The photos, Trinity. The family photos you've been systematically erasing me from. Those old things? I was just updating... Updating what? History? I stood up, my coffee forgotten. You can't just delete people because they're inconvenient to your narrative. Girls, Mom interjected, please, it's your father's birthday. Can we just have one nice family breakfast? Family? I laughed, the sound hollow. Is that what we're calling this? Ainsley, Marshall spoke for the first time, his voice soft. Maybe we should... Don't. I held up my hand. You lost the right to say my name when you decided my sister was a better option. Trinity stepped forward, her eyes pleading. It wasn't like that. We never meant to... To what? Fall in love? Get married 6 months after my divorce? Move into the house we picked out together? The words tumbled out, years of hurt breaking through my carefully constructed walls. There's something you don't know, Trinity started, glancing nervously at Marshall. But before she could continue, Dad's phone buzzed. He checked it, his face growing serious. It's about Grandma, he said quietly. The room fell silent. Some things, it seemed, could still unite us, however briefly. What about her? Mom asked. Dad looked up, his eyes meeting mine first, then moving to Trinity. She's asking for both of you. Says she needs to tell you something before... He trailed off, but we all understood. Trinity's face paled. Both of us? Together, Dad confirmed. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Not just of Grandma's condition, but of whatever secret was about to be revealed. When? I asked Dad. Today. Now, actually, she's insisting. I grabbed my purse from the counter. I'll drive myself. Ainsley, wait. Trinity called after me. We should go together. I turned back one last time, taking in the scene. My parents' worried faces, Marshall's guilty expression, Trinity's pleading eyes, and the wall of doctored photos behind them all. Together? I shook my head. That word doesn't mean what it used to, Trinity. Not anymore. As I walked out, I heard Mom start to cry. But I didn't stop. Sometimes the only way forward is to walk away from the picture-perfect lie and face whatever ugly truth awaits, even if it means facing it alone. The drive to the hospital gave me time to compose myself. But walking into Lawson Industries headquarters an hour later still felt like stepping into armor. The gleaming 40-story building was my fortress, built from the ashes of betrayal. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Peyton said, falling into step beside me as I strode through the lobby. "Family breakfast went that well, huh?" "Grandma's in the hospital." And yes, breakfast was a disaster. We stepped into the elevator, and Peyton hit the button for the top floor. "Did Trinity show up with—" "Yes, and you won't believe what she's done to the family photos." The elevator doors opened to reveal our executive floor, where Lisa, my mentor and board member, was waiting. "Emergency board meeting in 10 minutes, she announced. "The Miller acquisition is falling apart." "Perfect timing," I muttered. Nothing like a corporate crisis to take my mind off family drama. "Speaking of family," Peyton said, checking her phone, "you've got an email from Trinity." I stopped walking. "Delete it." "Ainsley?" Lisa's voice was gentle but firm. "You can't keep running from this forever." "Watch me." I pushed open the conference room doors, where our executive team was already assembled. "Let's talk about Miller." For the next 2 hours, I lost myself in spreadsheets and strategy. This was where I belonged, not in that suffocating house with its edited memories, but here, where success was measured in clear metrics and loyalty meant something. "Impressive save," Lisa commented after the meeting, "but we need to talk." I followed her into my office, Peyton close behind. The wall of windows offered a panoramic view of the city, reminding me how far I'd come from that broken woman who'd discovered her husband's betrayal 5 years ago. "Trinity's email," Peyton said, pulling it up on her tablet. "You should read it." "I really shouldn't." "It mentions Grandma," Lisa pointed out, "and something about Marshall losing everything." That caught my attention. "What?" Peyton cleared her throat and read, "Ains, I know you hate me, but Grandma's asking for both of us. There's something you need to know, and Marshall's company went bankrupt last month. He's looking for work. I'm not asking for help, just thought you should know. Please come to the hospital." "Trin." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Karma's a bitch, isn't it?" "Ainsley," Lisa leaned forward, "remember what I told you when you started this company? Success is the best revenge?" "No, I said success shouldn't be about revenge at all. It should be about proving your worth to yourself." My phone buzzed, Dad calling. I ignored it. "Your sister's not the only one who can edit photos," Peyton said suddenly, pulling up our company website. "Look at this." On the screen was our leadership team photo. I stood in the center, confident and powerful, nothing like the woman whose husband had left her for her sister. "This is who you are now," Peyton said. "Not that girl they tried to erase." My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. I silenced it. "What do you think Grandma wants to tell us?" I wondered aloud. "Only one way to find out," Lisa replied. My computer pinged with a new email notification. The subject line made my blood run cold. "Job application. Marshall." "No fucking way," Peyton breathed, reading over my shoulder. "He doesn't know," I realized. "He has no idea this is my company." Lisa's eyes gleamed. "Now that's what I call karma." "Delete it," Peyton suggested. "Let him wonder why he never heard back." But something stopped me. Maybe it was Grandma's mysterious summons, or maybe it was the thought of Marshall, the man who'd once promised to love me forever, desperately sending out job applications, unaware he was begging his ex-wife for employment. "No," I said, opening the application. "Schedule an interview." "Ainsley," Peyton warned, "don't do something you'll regret." "Oh, I won't regret this." I forwarded the application to HR with specific instructions. "Set it up for next week, and don't tell him who he's meeting with." My phone buzzed a third time. Trinity again. This time I answered. "Grandma's asking for you," she said, her voice small. "Please come." I looked at the job application on my screen, then at the company photo where I stood proud and undefeated. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, hanging up before she could respond. "Want company?" Peyton offered. "No." I grabbed my purse. "But keep that interview time open next week. I want to handle it personally." As I headed for the elevator, Lisa called after me. "Remember, success isn't about revenge. Maybe not, but sometimes revenge is just a bonus." The hospital corridor stretched before me like a runway to confrontation. Trinity sat outside Grandma's room, her designer dress replaced by wrinkled jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. She looked up as my heels clicked against the linoleum. "You came," she said, standing quickly. "I wasn't sure." "I'm here for Grandma, not you." A nurse emerged from the room. "She's asking for both of you, together." Trinity reached for my arm. I stepped away. "Let's just get this over with," I said, pushing past her into the room. Grandma lay propped up against white pillows, looking smaller than I remembered. Her sharp eyes, though, were as alert as ever. "My girls," she said, patting the bed on either side of her. "Sit." We perched awkwardly on opposite edges of the bed, careful not to touch. "Look at you two," Grandma shook her head. "Acting like strangers when you used to be inseparable." "Things change," I said flatly. "They sure do." Grandma reached for a worn envelope on her bedside table. "That's why I need to tell you something. About your Aunt Rachel." Trinity stiffened beside me. "Mom's sister, the one who died before we were born?" "She didn't die," Grandma said quietly. "She ran away. With her sister's fiancé." The room went still. Trinity's breath caught. "What?" I whispered. "Your mother was engaged to a man named David. Rachel was her maid of honor, her best friend." Grandma's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. 2 weeks before the wedding, they disappeared together. She pulled out an old photograph. Not edited, not perfect, just real. Two young women smiled at the camera, arms around each other. "Mom never spoke about Rachel," Trinity said, "because it nearly destroyed her." Grandma's voice hardened. "Until she met your father, she was a shell of herself. The betrayal broke something in her that never fully healed." I stood up abruptly. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because history has a way of repeating itself." Grandma looked directly at Trinity. "Doesn't it?" Trinity burst into tears. I never wanted." "Save it," I snapped. "You knew exactly what you were doing." "No!" Trinity jumped up. "You don't understand. Marshall came to me after he found out." "Found out what?" "That's enough," a new voice said from the doorway. Mom stood there, pale but composed. "Mother, what are you doing?" "Trying to stop these girls from making the same mistakes," Grandma replied. "Before it's too late." "It's already too late," I said. "No." Mom stepped into the room. "It's not. Rachel came back, years later, after David left her for someone else." "What happened?" Trinity asked. I shut the door in her face. Mom's voice was flat, and I've regretted it every day since. My phone buzzed. A text from Peyton. "Marshall's interview confirmed for Tuesday. Sure you want to do this?" "Ainsley?" Trinity touched my arm. "There's something else you need to know. About Marshall. About why he really—" "Stop." I pulled away. "I don't care anymore. What's done is done." "But, Ms. Lawson," a nurse appeared. "Your grandmother needs to rest now." Grandma grabbed both our hands. "Promise me you'll talk. Really talk. Before it's too late." I looked at her frail form, then at the old photograph of Mom and Rachel, two sisters, before betrayal tore them apart. "I have to go," I said, pulling my hand free. "Work emergency." "Always running," Mom murmured, "just like I did." I paused at the door. "Trinity, tell Marshall to wear his best suit on Tuesday. He'll need it." "Tuesday?" She frowned. "What's Tuesday?" "His job interview." I smiled and saw Mom flinch at the expression. "At Lawson Industries." Trinity's face went white. "But that's... your... CEO?" I finished for her. Funny how life works out, isn't it? "Ainsley, please." Mom stepped forward. "Don't do something you'll regret." "Like what? Sleep with my sister's husband? Edit people out of photos? Or maybe just destroy someone's life for my own happiness?" "Like letting bitterness poison you," Grandma called from the bed. "Like I watched it poison your mother for 20 years. I looked at them all, Grandma in her hospital bed, Mom with her haunted eyes, Trinity with tears streaming down her face. 3 generations of women marked by betrayal. "Tuesday," I repeated, turning away. "Don't let him be late." As I walked out, I heard Trinity sob. "What have I done?" What indeed, little sister? What indeed? The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and spreadsheets, but Monday evening found me still at my desk, staring at Marshall's resume. His career trajectory told its own story, from rising star to desperate job seeker. "You're obsessing," Peyton said, dropping a stack of files on my desk. "And you haven't told me what happened at the hospital." Nothing happened. I closed the resume. Just family drama and old secrets. Speaking of secrets, Peyton hesitated. HR did some digging on Marshall's company. The bankruptcy wasn't just bad luck. There were irregularities. My phone lit up with a text from Trinity. "Please call me before tomorrow. It's important." I ignored it. What kind of irregularities? The kind that could lead to criminal charges. Peyton sat down. "He's desperate, Ainsley. More than we thought." "Good." "Is it?" She leaned forward. "Because this feels less like karma and more like—" My office door burst open. Mom stood there, looking determined. "We need to talk," she announced. Peyton stood. "I'll give you two some privacy." "No," I said. "Stay. Whatever this is, you can say it in front of my CFO." Mom closed the door behind her. "Your sister told me about Marshall's interview tomorrow." And I'm here to tell you what really happened 5 years ago." She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then placed it on my desk. "Read it." The screen showed an email chain between Marshall and Trinity from 5 years ago. The first email was dated 3 weeks before I discovered their affair. "I can't do this anymore," Marshall had written. "She needs to know the truth." Trinity's response: "If you tell her, I'll tell everyone what really happened with the company money. Is that what you want?" My hands started shaking. "What is this?" "Keep reading," Mom said quietly. The emails continued, showing a pattern of blackmail. Trinity threatening to expose something, Marshall begging her to stop. The final email, sent the day before I caught them together. "Fine, you win, but this will destroy her." "I don't understand," I whispered. "Trinity discovered Marshall had embezzled money from his first company," Mom explained. "She used it to force him to leave you for her." Peyton swore under her breath. "Why?" I looked at Mom. Why would she do that? Because she was in love with him, had been since college, and she thought— Mom's voice cracked. "She thought if she could just get him away from you, he'd love her back." "Did he?" "No." Mom sat heavily in a chair. "He's been miserable for 5 years. They both have." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Trinity. "I'm sorry for everything. Please let me explain." "So tomorrow," Peyton said slowly, "when he comes in for the interview, he'll be walking into a trap," Mom finished, "just like Trinity trapped him 5 years ago." I stood up, walking to the window. The city lights blurred through unshed tears. "You know what's funny?" I said. "I've spent 5 years building this company, becoming someone powerful enough that I could never be hurt like that again. And now you have the power to destroy them both," Peyton said. "Just like Rachel destroyed me," Mom added quietly, "and I destroyed her right back by cutting her out of our lives forever." My phone rang. Trinity again. This time, I answered. "Stop calling." "Please," she sobbed. "I know what I did was unforgivable. But Marshall, he's not a bad person. He was trying to save his father's company. The money, he paid it all back." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I can't watch you become what I was. Someone so consumed by wanting something that they'd destroy anyone to get it." I hung up. "The interview's in 12 hours, Peyton said. "What do you want to do?" Mom stood. "Before you decide, look at this." She pulled out another photo, not edited this time. It showed Trinity and me as children, laughing in the backyard sprinkler. "This is who you were before betrayal changed you both. The question is, who do you want to be now?" I stared at the photo for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. "Trinity, meet me at the coffee shop across from my office. In an hour. Bring Marshall." "Ainsley, just be there." After hanging up, I turned to Peyton. "Cancel tomorrow's interview, but keep his resume on file." "You're letting them off the hook?" she asked. "No." I looked at the childhood photo again. "I'm letting myself off the hook. 5 years of hating them has been exhausting." Mom hugged me, and for the first time in years, I let her. "Besides," I added, pulling away, "success really is the best revenge, and I've already won." The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. Through the window, I could see Trinity and Marshall already seated in a corner booth, both looking like they were awaiting execution. Good. Want backup? Peyton asked, standing beside me. No, this is something I need to do alone. The bell chimed as I entered. Trinity's head snapped up, and Marshall looked exactly like he had the day I caught them together, guilty, trapped, and somehow relieved. Ainsley, Trinity started to stand. Stay seated. I slid into the booth across from them, placing a manila folder on the table. We have a lot to discuss. A waitress approached. Can I get you anything? Just black coffee, thanks. I turned back to them. So, blackmail. Marshall flinched. Trinity grabbed his hand. I can explain, she began. No need. I opened the folder. I have the emails. Mom showed me everything. Of course she did, Trinity whispered. The embezzlement, I continued, looking at Marshall. Was it worth it? He shook his head. My father's company was failing. I thought I could fix it, pay it back before anyone noticed. But Trinity found out and decided to use it to steal my husband. I smiled without warmth. How romantic. I was obsessed, Trinity's voice cracked. With both of you, really. Your perfect marriage, your perfect life. I convinced myself if I could just have what you had. How did that work out? Marshall pulled his hand away from Trinity's. 5 years of misery for everyone. The waitress brought my coffee. I took a sip, letting the silence stretch. The interview tomorrow, Marshall said finally. Is it still canceled? I pulled out another document. But I have a different proposition. Trinity leaned forward. What kind of proposition? A contract. My company will acquire what's left of Marshall's business, absorbing its debts and assets. You'll have a junior position in our finance department. Not directly under me, of course. Marshall's eyes widened. Why would you? Because watching you fail isn't enough anymore. I pushed the contract toward him. I want you to succeed, under my terms, in my company, knowing every day that your success depends on my generosity. That's cruel, Trinity whispered. Crueler than blackmail, than stealing your sister's husband? I turned to her. Don't worry, I have something for you too. I pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. Trinity opened it with trembling hands. Inside were all the original family photos, the ones she'd edited me out of. Mom gave them to me, I explained. I want you to put them back. All of them. Stop pretending I never existed. Tears rolled down Trinity's cheeks. I'm so sorry. I was so wrong. About everything. I know. I took another sip of coffee. That's why I'm not pressing charges about the blackmail. That's why I'm offering Marshall a way out of his mess. Because I'm done letting your mistakes control my life. Marshall picked up the contract. This is more than generous. It's not generosity, it's business. I stood up. You have until tomorrow to decide. Oh, and Trinity? She looked up, mascara streaking her face. Grandma's being discharged tomorrow. I'm hosting a family dinner to celebrate. You're both invited. Really? Hope flickered in her eyes. On one condition. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. Take a picture with me, right now. No editing, no pretending, just reality. Trinity practically leaped out of the booth, wrapping her arms around me as I held up the phone. Marshall watched, a sad smile on his face. Smile, I said and clicked. The photo wasn't perfect. Trinity's makeup was smeared, my coffee cup was in the frame, and you could see Marshall's dejected figure in the background. But it was real. Send that to Mom, I told Trinity. Let her know what time to come tomorrow. As I gathered my things, Marshall spoke up. Ainsley, thank you. Not just for the job, but for not destroying us when you could have. I didn't do it for you. I shouldered my bag. I did it because carrying around all that hate was exhausting. And because success isn't about revenge, it's about being better than the people who hurt you. Trinity reached for my hand. This time, I let her take it. See you tomorrow? She asked. Yeah. I squeezed her hand once, then let go. But Trinity, if you ever try to edit me out of anything again, never, she promised. I want you in every picture from now on, if you'll let me. I nodded and walked out, leaving them with their coffee, their contracts, and their consequences. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of redemption. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Proud of you. For the first time in 5 years, I was proud of me too. My kitchen buzzed with activity as I prepared for Grandma's homecoming dinner. Peyton had insisted on helping, though her idea of helping mostly involved taste testing everything and offering running commentary. You're stress cooking, she observed, sampling the sauce. 3 courses for a family dinner? I'm not stressed. I checked the oven. I just want everything to be perfect. The doorbell rang. Peyton raised an eyebrow. Showtime. Mom and Dad arrived first, carrying Grandma's favorite flowers. Then Lisa, who'd insisted on coming for moral support. Finally, the doorbell rang again. I'll get it, Peyton offered. No. I wiped my hands on a towel. I should. Trinity and Marshall stood awkwardly on my doorstep, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Marshall clutched a signed contract in one hand. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Everyone's in the living room. We brought wine. Trinity held up a bottle. Your favorite. You remember? I remember everything. She handed me the bottle, even the things I pretended to forget. In the living room, conversations stopped as we entered. Dad immediately launched into a story about his golf game, trying to ease the tension. Mom busied herself arranging Grandma's flowers. Lisa watched everything with keen interest. Where's Grandma? I asked. Running late, Mom replied. The discharge papers took longer than expected. Marshall cleared his throat. Ainsley, about the contract. Not now, I cut him off. Let's just get through dinner first. The doorbell rang again. This time, Dad went to answer it. Moments later, he returned with Grandma in a wheelchair, looking frail but determined. Well, she announced, surveying the room. This is quite a gathering. Welcome home, Grandma, Trinity and I said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. That's more like it, Grandma smiled. Now, someone help me to the table. I smell something delicious. As everyone moved toward the dining room, Marshall hung back. The contract, he said quietly. I signed it. We'll discuss it at the office on Monday. Thank you, he said, for giving me a chance to make things right. Don't thank me yet. I met his eyes. Prove yourself first. At the table, I deliberately seated Trinity and Marshall opposite each other, with empty chairs between them. Some boundaries needed to stay in place. Before we eat, Grandma announced, I have something to say. She pulled out an old envelope, different from the one at the hospital. Trinity, Ainsley, your mother doesn't know I have these. Mom frowned. Have what? Letters, Grandma said. From Rachel. One every year for 20 years. The room went silent. Mom's face drained of color. She never stopped trying to make amends, Grandma continued, even when her letters went unanswered, even when she was dying. Dying, Mom whispered. She passed last month. Grandma placed the envelope on the table. Her last letter arrived yesterday. It's for you, Vienna. Mom's hands shook as she reached for the envelope. Read it, Grandma urged, before it's too late for anything but regret. As Mom opened the letter, Trinity reached across the table toward me. I won't wait 20 years, she said. I won't stop trying to make this right. Neither will I, Marshall added quietly. Dear Vienna, Mom read aloud, her voice trembling. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've spent 20 years trying to tell you how sorry I am, how the guilt of what I did has haunted every day of my life. I watched Mom read, saw the tears rolling down her cheeks, noticed how Dad held her hand tighter with each word. Across the table, Trinity was crying too. Even Marshall looked affected. Life's too short for unfinished business, Grandma said when Mom finished reading. Too short for edited photos and unspoken words. To new beginnings, Lisa raised her glass. And old memories, Peyton added. I looked around my table, at my sister who'd betrayed me, my ex-husband who'd broken my heart, my mother who'd carried her own pain for decades, and my grandmother who'd orchestrated this whole reconciliation. To family, I said finally. Complicated as it is, Trinity smiled through her tears. Even the parts we tried to edit out? Especially those parts. I raised my glass, because they're what make the story real. As everyone clinked glasses, my phone buzzed with a work email. For the first time in 5 years, I ignored it. Some moments couldn't be edited, scheduled, or controlled. They just had to be lived. Now, Grandma declared, let's eat before Ainsley's masterpiece gets cold. And tomorrow we're putting all the photos back on the wall, every single one. Trinity caught my eye and nodded. Sometimes the hardest pictures to face were the ones that told the truth. Monday morning arrived with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Marshall's first day at Lawson Industries. I'd barely settled into my office when Peyton burst in. "We have a problem," she announced. "The Miller acquisition? They're backing out." "What? Why?" "Someone leaked information about Marshall joining the company. Given his history..." My phone rang. Trinity. "Not now," I told Peyton, answering the call. Trinity. "Turn on the financial news," she said breathlessly. "Now." I grabbed the remote, switching on the office TV. The headline scrolled across the bottom. Lawson Industries under scrutiny. CEO hires disgraced ex-husband. "Shit," Peyton muttered. The reporter's voice filled the room. "Sources suggest Marshall Norris, known for his controversial departure from his previous company, has been hired by his ex-wife, Ainsley Lawson. This raises questions about the company's judgment and financial stability." "I'm so sorry," Trinity's voice cracked. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't blackmailed him..." "Get Marshall up here," I told Peyton. "Now." He arrived looking shell-shocked, clutching a newspaper. "Ainsley, Save it." I muted the TV. "We need to get ahead of this." Lisa strode in, followed by 2 other board members. "Emergency meeting in 5 minutes. The shareholders are panicking." "Wait." Trinity's voice came through the phone speaker. "I can fix this." "How?" I demanded. "By telling the truth. All of it. Let me come down there." 20 minutes later, we sat in the conference room. Me, Marshall, Trinity, the board members, and our PR team. The stock was falling by the minute. "Here's what we know," our PR director said. "The story's gone viral. We need a statement immediately." Trinity stood up. "Let me make the statement." "Absolutely not," Lisa objected. "Yes," I said quietly. "Let her speak." Trinity squared her shoulders. "I'll confess to the blackmail. Explain how I forced Marshall to leave Ainsley, how he'd already paid back the money he borrowed before I ever found out about it." "That could ruin you," Marshall protested. "I ruined enough already." She turned to the PR team. "Set up a press conference. Today." "It won't be enough," Lisa warned. "We need more. Then I'll give them more." I stood up. "We'll both speak. Show them how we're moving forward. Redemption sells better than scandal." An hour later, we faced a room full of reporters. Camera flashes exploded as Trinity stepped up to the microphone. "5 years ago, I committed an act of betrayal," she began. "I blackmailed Marshall Norris into leaving my sister, using information about a loan he'd already repaid." The room erupted with questions. Trinity held up her hand. "Let me finish. This isn't about Marshall's past mistakes. It's about mine. About how jealousy and obsession led me to destroy my sister's marriage and nearly destroy a good man's reputation." I stepped forward then, taking my place beside her. "Lawson Industries stands for second chances," I said clearly. "We believe in redemption, in learning from past mistakes. Marshall Norris paid back every penny he borrowed. He's paid for his mistakes, and now he's been given an opportunity to prove himself again." "Under your supervision?" a reporter called out. "Your ex-husband?" "Under the supervision of our board and our shareholders," I corrected, "with full transparency and accountability." "And what about your sister?" another asked. "How can you work with a woman who betrayed you?" Trinity grabbed my hand. I let her. "Because holding on to hate hurts the person holding it most," I said. "Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is forgive." "Even when it's not deserved?" someone shouted. "Especially then." I squeezed Trinity's hand. "That's what makes it brave." The press conference ended with our stock stabilizing. As reporters filed out, Marshall approached us. "Thank you," he said. "Both of you. I don't deserve..." "No," Trinity cut him off. "You don't. Neither do I. But that's not the point anymore, is it?" "The point," I added, "is what we do next." My phone buzzed, a text from Grandma. "Watching the news. Proud of my girls." Trinity peeked at the message and smiled tearfully. "Still want those family photos back on the wall?" "Every single one," I nodded. "Even the messy ones. Especially the messy ones." As we left the conference room, Peyton caught up with us. "Miller called. They're back in. Said something about admiring a company that faces its problems head on. See? Trinity nudged me. Sometimes the truth sets everyone free. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Hope. Not just for forgiveness, but for something better. Something real. Maybe that's what redemption really looks like. Not perfect photos on a wall, but messy moments of truth, captured in all their complicated glory. The ladder wobbled as I climbed, clutching the last family photo to be rehung. Careful, Trinity called from below. That's the only original we have of Grandma's 80th. Then maybe you shouldn't have edited the copies, I teased, carefully placing the frame. Too soon? She handed me another nail. Just soon enough. We'd spent the afternoon restoring photos to Mom and Dad's walls, each picture a small step toward healing. Now only this last one remained, the four of us at Grandma's birthday, before everything fell apart. The doorbell rang. That'll be Marshall with the contracts, Trinity said. I'll get it. I climbed down as voices drifted in from the foyer. Marshall, but also Mom, Dad, and Grandma. Perfect timing, Grandma announced, wheeling herself in. I wanted everyone here for this. She held up an envelope. Not the ones from before, but something new. More letters? Mom asked. No. Grandma pulled out a photograph I'd never seen before. This was taken the day Rachel came back to apologize. The day I let her in, even though Vienna wouldn't. The photo showed a younger Grandma hugging a woman who could have been Mom's twin. I kept it hidden, Grandma continued, because looking at it hurt too much. But pain hidden doesn't hurt less, it just hurts longer. Marshall shifted uncomfortably. Maybe I should go. Stay, I said. You're part of this story too, the good and the bad. Speaking of which, he pulled out a stack of papers. The Miller contracts are ready. We just need your signature. I took the contracts, but didn't open them. Before I sign, I need to know something. Why did you really take that money from your first company? He glanced at Trinity, who nodded encouragingly. My father was dying, he said quietly. The experimental treatment wasn't covered by insurance. I thought I could save him and the company. I was wrong about both. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because you would have helped, and I wanted to fix it myself. He laughed bitterly. Instead, I lost everything, including you. Not everything, Trinity said. Not anymore. Dad cleared his throat. While we're all being honest, Vienna, show them. Mom pulled out her phone, hands shaking slightly. I called Rachel's daughter yesterday. We talked for hours. She's coming to visit next week. Really? Grandma's eyes filled with tears. Life's too short for edited photos and edited families, Mom said. You taught me that. I picked up a pen and signed the Miller contracts. To new chapters. Speaking of new chapters, Trinity reached into her purse. I have something to show you all. She pulled out a small ultrasound photo. The room went silent. I'm pregnant, she said softly. And before anyone asks, no, it's not Marshall's. I've been seeing someone. A good man who knows everything about my past and loves me anyway. Marshall smiled, genuinely smiled. I'm happy for you, Trin. Me too, I surprised myself by saying. You'll be a great mom. Better than I was a sister, she said. But I'm working on that too. Grandma wheeled over to the wall of photos. Look at that. All back where they belong. No more gaps, no more editing. No more pretending, I agreed. Just family, Dad added. Messy and complicated and real. My phone buzzed. Peyton. Miller deal is done. Stock's up 15%. Karma's got nothing on success. I showed Trinity the message. She laughed. Remember when you were going to use that interview to destroy Marshall? Remember when you used blackmail to steal my husband? Too soon? She asked again. Just soon enough, I repeated, but this time we both laughed. Grandma held up her camera. One more for the wall? We gathered together. Mom and Dad, Trinity and Marshall, me and Grandma. No perfect poses, no forced smiles. Just us, in all our complicated glory. Wait, Trinity said before Grandma clicked. Ainsley, I need you to know something. I'm naming her Rachel, after the aunt who taught us that it's never too late to make things right. The camera flashed, capturing my tears. Trinity's smile, Marshall's relief, Mom's joy, Dad's pride, and Grandma's knowing look. Later, when we hung that photo, I realized something. Sometimes the most beautiful pictures aren't the perfect ones. They're the ones that show us exactly as we are, healing, hoping, and finally whole. Look at us, Trinity whispered, standing beside me. Yeah, I said. Look at us now. The wall of photos told our story. Not the edited version, but the real one. With all its flaws and failures, all its redemption and hope. Just like family should be.
In the kitchen where morning sunlight streamed through the window, Aiden watched his mother's back. Jennifer's warm voice echoed amid the steam rising from the frying pan. In the weekend morning's quietness, mother and son shared a peaceful moment. Today we're having French toast. I'll drizzle plenty of maple syrup on it for you. Thank you, Mom. Jennifer flinched for a moment at Aiden's smile. It was just like his father in the photograph. The gentleness in his eyes, the slight tension around his mouth, even his hand gestures, they were identical to those of the man whose memorial photo she still cherished after the divorce. Before breakfast, Aiden carefully pulled out a small box wrapped in pink ribbon. I wonder if the baby will like playing with this, he said softly. He had spent a week choosing the adorable animal-shaped rattle. I'm sure they'll love it. Even as she said this, a small worry sprouted in Jennifer's heart. The baby shower today. Would she once again feel her mother Patricia's piercing gaze? Even in yesterday's phone call, there had been coldness in her mother's voice. The aroma of toast on the table momentarily triggered memories of the divorce 3 years ago. In court, Patricia had outright tried to deny Jennifer's custody rights. Her mother's words, "She has no right to raise that child," still stung her heart. Since the announcement of her sister Ashley's pregnancy, the family atmosphere had definitely changed. Patricia fussed over her daughter's condition daily, monitoring everything from diet to exercise. Given that it was a pregnancy achieved through fertility treatments, her overprotectiveness was almost abnormal. Even when they happened to meet at the supermarket, she would check Ashley's shopping basket, removing any items containing additives. Your child is my true grandchild. Jennifer had heard such words countless times. They seemed to deny Aiden's very existence. This tendency had only grown stronger since Ashley's pregnancy was confirmed. To Patricia's eyes, Aiden was the spitting image of her husband who had disappeared with his mistress 20 years ago. In the boy's innocent smile, she saw her past trauma. It had eaten away at her heart, turning into hatred. Even during worship at the megachurch, hatred would well up with her prayers. Her prayers to God had gradually transformed into vows of revenge. The previous day, Patricia had been in deep discussion with the hotel staff. There must be no mistakes in tomorrow's plan, she had given detailed instructions, making thorough preparations. There was something unsettling in her gaze. In the hotel lobby, she repeatedly checked her watch, clutching her phone, opening and closing the screen. Her fingertips trembled slightly. Meanwhile, Aiden carefully held the present for his coming cousin, thinking of kind gestures for Ashley. I hope Big Sister's baby is born healthy, he had practiced saying in his room many times. Would he be able to say it without getting nervous tomorrow? In the mirror, his practicing smile reflected his father's image. That night, Patricia stared at a photograph in her study. It was their last family photo from 20 years ago. She gently traced her husband's face with her fingertip. Her expression mixed love and hatred. In her diary, one line was written in distorted handwriting. Like ink seeping into paper, thoughts of revenge had stained her heart. Tomorrow, it all ends. At midnight, Patricia called the hotel again. Her voice asking, "Is everything ready for tomorrow?" was swallowed by the darkness of night. The hand placing down the receiver trembled slightly. Soft music played in the luxury hotel's banquet room. Pink and gold balloons swayed elegantly from the ceiling, and pure white tablecloths covered the tables. The aroma of hors d'oeuvres being brought in by catering staff wafted through the elegant space. The gift table was piled high with presents decorated with ribbons and lace, beside which the words, "Welcome baby," gleamed in gold. Aidan stood in a corner of the venue, repeatedly adjusting his bow tie. The navy jacket Jennifer had chosen was a bit tight, but he decided to bear with it for this special day. He mentally repeated the words he'd practiced since morning. "Aidan, don't just stand there. You're in the way of the guests." The boy stiffened at Patricia's voice. His grandmother, dressed in a gray silk dress, cast him a cold glance. Her expensive pearl necklace cast an eerie gleam under the fluorescent lights. Beside her, one of the staff in a black suit whispered something, and Patricia gave a small nod. Her fingertips could be seen trembling slightly. Invited guests arrived one after another. Ashley's colleagues, church acquaintances, relatives. More than 50 participants placed their gifts on the present table. The custom-ordered cake was 3 tiers high, decorated with adorable baby shoes made of sugar. Ashley greeted everyone with a bright smile, occasionally touching her belly with a happy expression. "Oh, thank you all so much," Ashley said, dabbing at her eyes. The ladies from the megachurch gathered around her, whispering words of blessing. Among them, Patricia wore a proud expression. 7 months pregnant with her large belly, Ashley sat on the sofa. Her pale pink maternity dress enhanced her happy expression. "I'm a little thirsty," she told her husband Michael. Though her typically worried husband immediately tried to offer mineral water, Aidan had already heard her words and was heading to the drink table. "Would you like this? The lemonade looks delicious." Aidan carefully approached Ashley, holding the glass of lemonade with both hands. Ice and lemon slices swayed refreshingly. Jennifer smiled at her son's pure thoughtfulness. His kindness had remained unchanged since childhood. However, that smile froze in the next instant. In a corner of the venue, Patricia was telling something to a staff member. Her eyes, like those of a bird of prey watching its target, followed Aidan's every move. The staff member gave a small nod and glanced toward the drink table. There was something unnatural in that gaze. "Watch out!" someone shouted as Aidan's feet became tangled. It felt as if someone had pushed him from behind. The glass tilted, and lemonade spilled onto the floor. Ice fragments rolled across the floor, and the yellow liquid stained the pure white carpet. Aidan fell to his knees near Ashley. "That's when it happened. Why did you put something in the drink?" Patricia's angry shout echoed through the venue. Her hand flew up, striking Aiden's cheek hard. A sharp sound cut through the air. Michael stood up protectively in front of Ashley. As Aiden's cheek swelled red, the boy desperately pleaded with a trembling voice. Large tears spilled from his eyes. "I didn't do anything. Really. Please believe me." Through tear-blurred vision, Aiden looked around. But no one seemed willing to listen to his words. The guests murmured, and some even started taking videos with their phones. The megachurch ladies covered their mouths, directing accusing looks at him. "Don't hit my son. Don't hurt Aiden." As Jennifer tried to rush over, one staff member bent down. He picked up an envelope from under the table. It was a light pink envelope with slightly wet corners. Could it be?" The staff member's voice trailed off. A look of confusion crossed his face as he stared at the envelope. The color drained from Patricia's face. Her hands began to tremble minutely. "Ma'am, about this envelope, earlier, I..." Those words transformed the atmosphere in the venue. Under the elegant decorations, time seemed to stand still. Only the party music played on emptily. Everyone held their breath, focusing on the envelope. Ashley let out a small groan, clutching her stomach. At her voice saying, "It hurts," Michael hurriedly supported his wife. Aiden, holding his swollen cheek, stared at his grandmother's transformed expression. Fear and confusion crossed her eyes. Before the envelope's contents could be revealed, Patricia grabbed her handbag with trembling hands. Her phone clattered to the floor. The screen displayed a history of careful exchanges with the staff. The date, time, and specific instructions. It clearly showed this was no coincidence. "Mom, what is all this?" Ashley's hoarse voice cut through the heavy air. Jennifer, holding her son tightly, trembled at the premonition of the coming storm. In her embracing arms, Aiden's small body shook. Under the luxurious chandelier of the banquet room, the family's distortions were about to be exposed. The lemonade stain spreading on the pure white tablecloth seemed to symbolize irreparable cracks, slowly expanding. "Really? I really didn't do anything." At those words, Patricia's expression filled with even more intense anger. Her white teeth clenched, her neck veins bulging with fury. "Be quiet. You always lie like that. Just like him." Jennifer's arms tightened around her child. At her mother's scream, Aiden's body trembled minutely. "Aiden doesn't lie. What were you planning?" Jennifer's voice mixed anger and sadness. The memory of the divorce trial 3 years ago came back vividly. Then too, her mother had tried to deny Aiden's existence. Ashley sank deep into the sofa, breathing with difficulty. Michael gently rubbed his wife's shoulders while keeping watchful eyes. "Patricia, I've already called the police. Please stay away from Aiden until they arrive." Michael's words momentarily distorted Patricia's expression. But she quickly covered it with a smile. There was something maniacal about that smile. "Ah yes, It would be better to have the police come. Someone needs to stop this child's problematic behavior. Patricia pulled a paper from her handbag. It looked like a letter from the school counselor. However, looking closely, the date had been unnaturally erased. Look at this. He's causing problems at school too. They say he has violent tendencies. Mom, that's forged. Aiden is an excellent student. The teachers always praise him. Jennifer's voice shook. The invited guests watched the situation unfold with bated breath. There was also a stir among the megachurch ladies. Suddenly, Ashley let out a pained voice. Michael hurriedly took out his phone to call an ambulance. Patricia took advantage of the confusion to raise her voice. See? This is what happens when this child is here. That's when the hotel's security manager in a black suit spoke up from the corner of the venue. I apologize, but we'd like to check the security camera footage. Patricia's face tensed. The security manager slowly approached, holding the envelope the staff had picked up. His footsteps echoed ominously in the heavy atmosphere. Actually, we received some concerning testimony from one of our staff members. The manager's words made the venue's atmosphere even more tense. Ashley, enduring her pain, watched her mother anxiously. There were special instructions from Patricia Sama from yesterday evening through this morning. Patricia's hands began to shake. What are you saying? Her words trailed off. At that moment, Ashley let out another cry of pain. This time it seemed stronger than before. An ambulance. Quickly. As Michael's voice rang out, Patricia suddenly reached for the envelope. However, the security manager quickly moved it away. This might be important evidence. I cannot hand it over. At those words, Patricia's expression completely crumbled. Sweat on her forehead, trembling lips, bloodshot eyes. It was the face of an elegant lady whose mask had fallen away. I just wanted to protect my family, that child. Aiden watched his confused grandmother with sad eyes. The pain in his heart was greater than his swollen cheek. Just then, there was a commotion at the venue entrance. Police. We received a report. 2 officers walked through the tense atmosphere. Patricia sighed deeply, as if realizing everything. Jennifer, you really are just like him. Patricia suddenly murmured in a calm voice. Her eyes no longer showed hatred, but deep fatigue. Can't you understand, Mom? Aiden is innocent. Stop fighting the ghosts in your heart. Jennifer's voice echoed quietly through the venue. In her embracing arms, Aiden's trembling gradually subsided. The paramedics arrived and began checking Ashley's condition. Patricia just stared blankly at her crumbling plans. The police officers were receiving an explanation of the situation from the security manager. The truth hidden for many years was about to be revealed. Under the luxurious decorations of the banquet room, one family's deep wounds were quietly but surely being exposed. Aiden, face buried in his mother's chest, whispered softly, "Mom." I really didn't do anything. I know, Aiden. It's okay now. Jennifer gently stroked her son's hair while facing forward with a dignified expression. In front of the police officers, the security manager opened the envelope. Inside were instructions written in Patricia's handwriting and bundles of cash. When she saw those words, Ashley let out a small scream. "Mom, why?" Ashley asked in a trembling voice as she lay on the stretcher. As the paramedics checked her blood pressure, deep sadness colored her pale face. The instructions detailed the entire plan. Bribing staff to trip Aiden when he carried the drink. Using the confusion to plant pre-prepared false evidence. Everything was a meticulous plan to banish Aiden from the family. That child must be eliminated. Patricia's voice echoed hollowly. Before the police officers, her elegant mask completely fell away. "You don't understand, every time I see that child smile, I. Suddenly, Patricia's emotions exploded. Her voice cracked, and large tears spilled from her eyes. 20 years ago, he betrayed me. When I was attending couples counseling with church friends, trying to deepen our family bonds, he. With trembling fingers, she pulled out a worn photograph from her handbag. It showed a happily smiling couple. He left with his secretary. All that was left were debts and rumors at the megachurch. He took everything from my life. In his mother's arms, Aiden held his breath at his grandmother's confession. His young heart mixed understanding and fear of his grandmother. And Aiden's smile. That child is just like him. The same eye shape, the same gestures, the same kindness. Every time I see it, my heart is torn apart. Patricia collapsed into a chair. Her diary fell to the floor, its pages opening. There, in distorted handwriting, were various thoughts bordering on madness. Aiden's existence eats away at my heart. Ashley's child is the new beginning. Everything must end. Ashley, supported by the paramedics, began speaking in a trembling voice. I too noticed Mother's abnormality. But I didn't want to acknowledge it. After failing fertility treatments so many times, I finally conceived. Mother was so happy. I wanted to cling to that happiness. Michael squeezed his wife's hand tightly. You did nothing wrong, he whispered. Meanwhile, determination shone in Jennifer's eyes. Mom, that's enough. Aiden is not Dad. He's just a 12-year-old child. Don't make him the target of your revenge. At those words, Patricia's body shook violently. But I just wanted to protect my family, at least Ashley's baby, from this curse. A curse? Jennifer's voice strengthened. The real curse is the hatred in your heart, Mom. Look. You've destroyed the family with your own hands. In a corner of the venue, the megachurch ladies whispered prayers. Whether those prayer words reached Patricia's ears, she suddenly looked up as if coming to her senses. What have I? A police officer quietly approached and placed a hand on Patricia's shoulder. Ma'am, would you come with us to the station? At that moment, Ashley spoke with a determined expression. Mom, let's end this. We need some distance. Until this child is born, no, until your heart heals. The last color drained from Patricia's face. Her daughter's words were the final blow. No. Ashley, at least you. Mother, Ashley's voice mixed sadness and strength. You who can't even apologize to my sister and Aiden have no right to be this child's grandmother. With those words, heavy silence spread through the venue. The paramedics began preparing to transport Ashley, and the police officers helped Patricia stand. Aiden finally spoke. Grandma. I was scared of you, but I didn't want to hate you. Because we're family. At those pure words, a tear rolled down Patricia's cheek. However, there was no going back now. The hatred nurtured over 20 years couldn't be healed by this moment of regret. Jennifer and Ashley quietly watched their mother's back as she was escorted away by the police. The sisters exchanged silent glances, preparing themselves for the long road ahead. 1 year later, soft sunlight streamed into a house in the Houston suburbs. The living room echoed with a baby's joyful laughter. Look, Emma. Let's play with your big brother. Ashley held out her adorable smiling daughter to Aiden. The 13-year-old boy gently lifted the baby. Her tiny hand touched his cheek. The pain from that day had long since faded. Emma's grown so much. Jennifer brought in coffee. Weekend afternoons had become a tradition for the sisters' families to gather. The aroma of homemade apple pie wafted over the table. The pie smells delicious. At Aiden's words, Ashley gave a gentle smile. Her expression no longer showed traces of her previous anxiety. Today's your last counseling session, isn't it? Ashley quietly asked. Aiden gave a small nod. The doctor says I'm okay now. But if I ever want to talk again, I can go back. Sessions with the trauma care specialist had helped greatly in healing Aiden's emotional wounds. Though he used to often wake from nightmares, he now sleeps peacefully. I was so happy when you were the first one to come see Emma when she was born. At Ashley's words, Aiden smiled shyly. That day, he had gently waved at the tiny life through the nursery window. His pure love was obvious to everyone. I think we've grown stronger than before, Jennifer said as she set down her coffee cup. The sisters nodded silently to each other. The events of that day had certainly torn the family apart. However, they had also become the catalyst for nurturing new bonds. I think about Mom sometimes. Ashley's voice trembled slightly. Holding Emma, she gazed out the window. Patricia, now living in a nursing home, still refused visitors. After being expelled from the megachurch, people gradually left her life. According to the nurses, she spent her days continuing to write in her diary. Yesterday, I got a call from the home. Jennifer said quietly. Mom still. I know, Ashley interrupted. The hatred in Mom's heart hasn't disappeared yet. They said her diary still contained thoughts written in distorted handwriting. Hatred cultivated over 20 years doesn't easily fade. It had become chains eternally binding Patricia's heart. But we have to keep moving forward. At Ashley's words, Michael poked his head out from the kitchen. In his hand was Emma's bottle. Yes, Jennifer nodded. Mom chose her path. That's her life. We have our own happiness. Aiden continued playing silently with Emma. The tiny life gazed at him with an innocent smile. Those eyes showed no trace of the past. Hey, Aiden. Ashley called out gently. Emma's christening is next month. Would you be her godfather? The boy's eyes widened in surprise. Me, a godfather? But there's no one more suitable than you, Ashley said with a serious expression. Pure, kind, and strong-hearted, I want you to be Emma's spiritual guide. A small tear rolled down Aiden's cheek. But these were no longer tears of sadness. They were warm tears of feeling the bonds of their new family. Michael smiled as he warmed Emma's bottle. Pleasant sounds of dinner preparation echoed from the kitchen. The sweet aroma of apple pie filled the room. Outside the window, the autumn sunset cast a warm light. The sky looked clearer than that day a year ago. The chain of hatred had truly been broken here. Emma's eyelids fluttered sleepily. Aiden gently returned the baby to Ashley. The sisters smiled as they watched this new form of family. Surely a wonderful light will shine on this child's future. Everyone quietly nodded at Jennifer's words. They knew they had gained the strength to overcome past wounds and believe in the future. The evening living room was filled with warm light. It was the light of hope for their new family. Right now, I'm at the pinnacle of happiness. Our house in Cherry Creek North, a quiet residential area in the Denver suburbs, is surrounded by white picket fences. This two-story craftsman-style home is the one Michael and I chose together 3 years ago. On holidays, you can see neighbors enjoying their barbecues, with the savory aroma wafting on the breeze. Seasonal flowers bloom at the entrance, and the lawn gleams a vibrant green. In our small garden, the herbs and vegetables I carefully tend are growing healthily. Amy, coffee's ready. I baked blueberry muffins this morning too. On Sunday morning, I heard Michael calling me as usual. While I work from home as a graphic designer, we always make it a point to enjoy breakfast together on weekends. Fresh fruit and yogurt, along with homemade muffins, this is our ideal way to start the morning. Through the large living room window, I can see neighborhood children riding their bikes. I smile, wondering if our child will one day play here too. Michael works as a middle manager at an IT company. With an annual income of $120,000, it's more than enough for people our age. But his appeal isn't just about money. He's actively involved in church activities and has a reputation as the ideal husband in the neighborhood. He always participates in volunteer work on holidays and is beloved by the local children. With trembling hands, I held out a small box to Michael. Is this? Michael stared at the box, his face gradually lighting up. I could see his hand shaking slightly as he set down his coffee cup. "We're having a baby." "Yes." Michael stood up and embraced me. "I'm going to be a dad." "I can't believe it. This is the beginning of our new family." That evening, we shared the news with our church community. After Sunday service at Cherry Hills Community Church, many friends offered their blessings. Sarah, who always volunteers with me at Sunday school, hugged me warmly and exclaimed, "You're going to be a wonderful mother." The pastor even said a special prayer for us. We also called my parents to share the news. My mother burst into tears of joy, and my father, unusually emotional, choked up. Then came a suggestion. "Why don't you stay near your mother?" Michael suggested. "I'm worried about you being alone, and it might be more reassuring to be near your parents for your first childbirth." My childhood home in the suburbs of St. Paul, Minnesota. The quiet lakeside house at White Bear Lake. Indeed, being near my mother for my first childbirth might be good. But I hesitate when I think about Michael. But what about you? Your work? Won't you be lonely? I'll definitely come visit on weekends. Besides, we have online communication now. Your health and the babies are the most important things. I nodded deeply at Michael's kind words. On the day I left for my parents' home, Michael helped carry my luggage and looked after me until the very end. He even brought my favorite cushion, saying, "So you can be comfortable on the plane." In his voice saying, "Take care," I thought I detected a hint of anxiety. Surely, he was worried about me and our unborn baby. "I'm looking forward to seeing you again." I gave him a light kiss and passed through the security gate. As I thought about my parents waiting at home in White Bear Lake, my heart swelled with excitement for this new chapter in my life. I felt warmth in my heart knowing I could safely give birth in my mother's caring arms. After safely delivering the baby, I decided to return home a week earlier than planned. The taxi carrying me entered the residential area of Cherry Creek North. The driver carefully proceeded at a slow speed. My 2-week-old son was breathing peacefully in my arms. I couldn't help but smile at the sight of his tiny fingers occasionally twitching. Thanks to my mother's devoted support, the delivery went smoothly. Although Michael had visited frequently at first, lately he'd been saying he was busy with work, and his communications had become less frequent. Concerned about my husband's behavior, I decided to return home early. "Would you like help with your luggage? It must be difficult with the baby." "Thank you, yes please." While the kind driver was unloading the luggage, I felt something was drastically wrong. The white of the picket fence in front of the house looked darker than usual. Had it not been maintained? The lawn I had carefully tended in early spring was overgrown, and the begonias and marigolds I had planted in the entrance garden were completely withered. A pile of mail was carelessly stacked on the porch, including newspapers and magazine subscriptions. All the curtains were drawn. Was Michael working late? But it's supposed to be the weekend. My son made a small whimpering sound. "It's okay, Mama's here," I whispered as I inserted the key with trembling hands. When I opened the front door, an eerie silence enveloped me. I couldn't hear the usual sound of the air conditioning or the television. "Michael. I'm home, it's me." There was no response to my subdued call. Anxiety began to swell deep in my chest. Holding my son tightly in both arms, I fearfully stepped into the living room and was met with an unbelievable sight. All the drawers were left open, with important documents and albums scattered across the floor. Our wedding photos were thrown carelessly on the ground. The expensive television and the audio set Michael had been so proud of were gone without a trace. Could it be a burglary? Instinctively holding my son tighter, I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. My fingers on the screen looked like they belonged to someone else. 911, what's your emergency? A calm female voice responded. Please come, there's been a burglary at my house. My voice was shaking, and I could barely get the words out. My throat felt constricted. Stay calm. Take a deep breath. What's your address? 4455 Maplewood Lane. I have a baby, my son who was just born 2 weeks ago. Guided by the operator's composed voice, I provided the address and situation. Following her advice to please wait outside the house, I hurried toward the entrance. A few minutes later, I heard police sirens approaching. Red and blue lights sliced through the darkness alternately. 2 patrol cars arrived almost simultaneously. Ma'am, is the baby all right? A young female officer gently asked. Her name tag read Sarah Johnson. Yes, he's sleeping. But I need to change his diaper. Let's do that in our car. It's safe there. While the male officers began investigating inside, I changed my son's diaper in the patrol car, accompanied by Officer Sarah. This routine act of caring for my baby provided a strange sense of comfort in this surreal situation. We've checked the house, the older male officer returned after a while. The name tag reading Detective Tom Riley gleamed under the streetlight. Ma'am, there's something I'd like to ask you about. Can you explain these? What Detective Riley showed me were familiar hotel receipts from the Sheraton Denver. The dates perfectly matched the period I was at my parents' home. Multiple receipts, all for the same room number. And beneath them, an empty box of contraceptives. A high-end brand hairpin. The sweet, sensual scent of perfume that definitely wasn't mine. And one decisive note. In Michael's distinctive handwriting, Hawaii, 7/15. A printout of first-class flight reservation confirmations. 2 seats. The world seemed to warp rapidly. Like a bad dream, but with an undeniable sense of reality. Only my son's presence barely kept me tethered to sanity. With trembling hands, I called my parents home. What's wrong? Amy, are you crying? Did something happen? At my mother's voice, tears began flowing uncontrollably. I'll explain later, but I need to leave the house right now. Please. Officer Sarah efficiently helped pack the essentials. Diapers, changes of clothes, milk, bottles, everything proceeded in a hazy consciousness. The officers carefully documented the house's condition and took my statement, though their eyes clearly showed sympathy. Sitting in the back of the patrol car, looking at my son's tiny face back in my arms, I understood everything. This wasn't a burglary. Our valuables hadn't been stolen. This was a calculated betrayal where our entire life had been stolen. Looking at our house illuminated by the streetlights through the patrol car's rearview mirror, I gently kissed my son's cheek. "It's okay, Mama will protect you." Those words sounded more like a vow to myself than to my son. The next morning, I sat in my parents' kitchen in White Bear Lake, facing the herbal tea my mother had made. Now awake from my brief sleep, I was confronted with the reality that last night's events weren't just a nightmare. "Amy, the police called," my mother quietly announced. "They checked with Michael's company." I checked on my sleeping son's face before cautiously looking at my mother. My son sleeping in the baby bed was my only support right now. Michael, apparently resigned 2 weeks ago. My hands gripped the cup tighter. 2 weeks ago. That was right after I gave birth. The exact time my son was born. He received $50,000 as severance pay. My mother's voice continued. And a female employee resigned around the same time. In my memory, puzzle pieces gradually came together. How Michael's visits suddenly stopped, how phone conversations decreased, how message responses became delayed. And how his reactions to the baby's photos were so indifferent. "Daughter," my father's voice resonated heavily as he entered the living room. "You should check the bank account." Logging into online banking revealed an unbelievable history. Our savings from 3 years of marriage had been reduced to almost zero in the past month. Weekly withdrawals had been made up to the limit. Our house loan. I opened the mortgage statement with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry," my father placed his hand on my shoulder. I contacted the real estate agent. "The house is listed for sale." Feeling nauseous, I rushed to the bathroom. Various memories were swirling in my head. Just then, my cell phone rang. It was Detective Riley from the Denver police. "Mrs. Williams, we have new information," his voice was cautious. "We checked the security footage from the Sheraton Denver. We have footage of the woman with Michael, a Ms. Jennifer Parker." I gasped at that name. Michael's subordinate. A woman known for her model-like appearance and ambitious personality. I had met her once at a Christmas party. The surveillance cameras show they had been regularly using the hotel since May. And the detective paused for a moment. "We've also confirmed credit card records. Purchases at high-end restaurants, jewelry shops, and Hawaiian airline tickets." All strength left my body. Only the sensation of my mother rubbing my back kept me connected to this reality. "We're currently tracking their whereabouts." According to the real estate agent, the house sale was being processed and was scheduled for contract next week. However, since your name is also on the deed, a unilateral sale would be invalid. After hanging up, I stared blankly out the window. The quiet surface of White Bear Lake gleamed in the morning sun. The scene seemed to mock my current life situation. "The lawyer I consulted will come this afternoon," my mother's voice seemed to come from far away. Everything will work out. You have us, and this little one. I found myself nodding unconsciously to my mother's words. Yes. I have a precious life to protect. I can't fall apart now. There's another update from the police. My father entered the living room with his smartphone. They found suspicious activity in Jennifer Parker's bank account. A large sum was deposited and then immediately withdrawn. The truth was becoming clear. This wasn't just an affair. It was a planned asset theft. A complete betrayal using my childbirth and return home as cover. In the afternoon, Attorney Grayson arrived. The female lawyer in her 50s analyzed the situation with calm eyes. First, let's file for asset preservation, she efficiently spread out documents. Then we'll prepare for divorce proceedings. There's plenty of evidence, so we can definitely protect your and your baby's rights. While reviewing the documents, I wondered if all the happy married life I had believed in until yesterday might have been a lie. But strangely, I didn't feel the intense turmoil of yesterday. Instead, a quiet anger and determination burned inside me. Amy, Attorney Grayson gently spoke. You're a victim. But you have the strength to overcome this. The proof is that you're already looking forward and taking action. I heard my baby crying. It was feeding time. As I picked up my son, I held his tiny hand. Mama will definitely protect you. Those words weren't just a promise. They were my vow to myself to live a new life. One morning, Michael and Jennifer were surrounded by numerous police officers as they attempted to board a flight to Hawaii. Their luggage contained $200,000 in cash and bundles of withdrawn bank books. The local newspaper, beloved by Cherry Creek North residents, prominently featured a photo of their arrest. I received the news through a call from Detective Riley while watching the TV news in my parents' living room at White Bear Lake, holding my son. I can't believe it, my mother whispered beside me. He had such a good reputation at church. Indeed, the Cherry Hills Community Church community was deeply shocked. My Sunday school colleagues called and messaged daily with words of encouragement. Especially Sarah, who called almost every night saying, "We're all praying for you and the baby." The interrogation proceeded quickly. Jennifer was the first to break. I was deceived, she began tearfully in the interrogation room. Michael said he had already agreed on divorce with his wife. Her confession revealed the full extent of the plan. Their relationship had started more than a year ago. Michael had begun preparing his escape when my pregnancy was discovered. And the most cruel fact, he had used my childbirth and return home as the perfect opportunity for escape. He said, "Let's start a new life," Jennifer continued, unable to lift her face. He said we'd start a real estate business in Hawaii, promised me a luxury condo. Michael, on the other hand, maintained his defiant attitude until the end. "This is groundless," he declared with folded arms in the interrogation room. My relationship with my wife was already broken. We were supposed to be discussing property division. However, his bravado was powerless against the evidence. Hotel security camera footage. Bank transaction records. Communications with real estate agents. And most decisive was the record on his laptop detailing plans for their new life in Hawaii. Flight confirmation emails, Honolulu real estate materials, new business plans. Everything served as evidence of a meticulously prepared plan. The trial began when my son was 2 months old. I had to testify as a witness in the Denver District Court. The defendant systematically moved assets immediately after your childbirth, correct? The prosecutor's voice echoed in the silent courtroom. Taking a deep breath, I answered in a clear voice, yes. While I was at my parents' home for childbirth, my husband, the defendant, was systematically converting our shared assets to cash. From the witness stand, Michael's expression looked strangely aged. His suit was impeccable, but the bags under his eyes were deep, and his cheeks were hollow. However, my heart no longer felt the turmoil of before. Only a calm amazement at how someone I had trusted so completely could become such a stranger. The defendant, Michael Williams, is hereby sentenced to 5 years in prison. When the judge's voice resonated, everyone in the courtroom seemed to feel this was an appropriate sentence. Additionally, he was ordered to fully return our assets and pay compensation. Jennifer received a suspended sentence due to mitigating circumstances. Considering that the defendant was largely deceived by her accomplice and fully cooperated with the investigation. The judge stated, as she nodded slightly. After the sentencing, our eyes met in the hallway. Her former beauty had faded, replaced by an exhausted expression. She started to say something, but I quietly walked away. Whether to forgive or not, such emotions were no longer necessary. So it's all over now, Attorney Grayson gently placed her hand on my shoulder as we were leaving. No, I answered while adjusting my hold on my son. Our new life is just beginning. The Cherry Creek North house was eventually sold. Parting with a home full of memories was sad, but perhaps it was a necessary step for a new beginning. Strangely, this event didn't just take something from my life, it also brought something new. Strength, determination, and above all, it taught me what true love really is. The Cherry Hills Community Church community showed more support than I could have imagined. My Sunday school friends collected donations to help fund my new life. Your experience will become hope for others, the pastor said, offering a room in the church as an activity space. Now, a support group for women who have had similar experiences meets there regularly. I sometimes hear about Jennifer. After her probation began, she apparently moved to Arizona. Her flashy social media posts have completely disappeared, and I hear she's now working at a small accounting firm. Mama. Suddenly, I heard a clear voice. Turning around, I saw Thomas toddling toward me with his arms wide open. His first steps. His first word. Thomas. I couldn't help but cry out, running to scoop him up in my arms. Everyone present burst into applause. Congratulations, David approached with a warm smile. What a wonderful birthday present. At that moment, I was certain. Life can take unexpected turns. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. What matters is finding meaning in each step forward. Outside the window, the waves of White Bear Lake gently lap at the shore. As the evening sky turns a soft purple, dreamlike light dances on the lake's surface. "Hey, Thomas," I kissed my son's cheek softly. "Our story is just beginning." My son looked up at me with sparkling eyes, as if he understood. The future reflected in those eyes must surely be full of hope. Because we have so much love. Yes, this isn't the end. It's just the prologue of a new chapter. The party continues in the living room. Laughter, conversation, children's excited voices. This warm space is truly our real home. Holding Thomas close, I made a vow in my heart. To live strongly, kindly, and with hope. That would be the best lesson I could pass on to this child. Tomorrow, another new day begins. Along with our new story. The end of winter in Minnesota still carried a biting chill. In the quiet residential area of Eden Prairie, puddles from melting snow sparkled quietly in the moonlight of the Wilson family's yard. With few cars passing by on the street, the neighborhood waited peacefully for spring's arrival. Jennifer Wilson tied the last ribbon on the bouquet in her hands. She needed to finish the flower arrangements for Sunday's church service. Gently lifting the completed bouquet, she smiled, her blue eyes crinkling as her warm brown hair swayed slightly. The sign for Jen's Flowers gleamed outside this small shop, which had built a solid reputation over its 5 years in business, handling wedding and church flower arrangements. Located near Eden Prairie Center, it caught the eye of shoppers, and the seasonal flowers in the display window added color to the street. At the daycare, Adrian ran towards her with open arms. His light brown hair and big blue eyes reminded her so much of herself as a child. Clutching his red T-Rex plushie in one hand, he enthusiastically launched into his daily dinosaur stories. The daycare teacher smiled fondly at his endless fascination with dinosaurs. "I drew a stegosaurus today. The teacher said it was really good. And I made a tyrannosaurus nest with blocks too. My, that's wonderful. Show me when we get home. What did you have for snack today?" "Chocolate chip cookies. But I saved half for Michael Papa." His recent switch to calling his stepfather Papa was a natural change that made Jennifer breathe a quiet sigh of relief. When they arrived home, Michael was still at work. Her husband, who worked as a project manager at an IT company, sometimes came home late but always made it back before dinner. 1 year into their marriage, he showed fatherly love to Adrian as his stepfather. On weekends, they would go to the zoo as a family, sometimes spending hours at the dinosaur exhibits. "I'm home. Oh, something smells good." When Michael returned, the aroma of chicken soup wafted from the kitchen. As the family of 3 began dinner, Adrian rapidly reported the day's events at daycare. When he tried to bring his dinosaur book to the table and was gently scolded, he showed a dissatisfied expression but quickly smiled again when Michael joked, "It's bedtime for the dinosaurs too." Bedtime stories always featured dinosaurs. While reading Triceratops Adventure, Adrian fell asleep earlier than usual. A star-shaped night light cast a warm glow across the room. When Jennifer returned to her room, she found a message from her ex-husband on her smartphone. Is the usual time okay for this weekend's visit? James, who worked as a real estate agent, never missed his twice-monthly visits despite his busy schedule, maintaining a cooperative relationship for Adrian's sake even after the divorce. What concerned her lately was James's new wife, Carol. With her perfect makeup and long black hair, she appeared gentle on the surface, but there was something unstable about her. Recently, she had been visiting the flower shop frequently, always talking about Adrian. Last week, Jennifer heard at the daycare that Carol had bought an expensive dinosaur figure. There were also rumors about her unsuccessful fertility treatments. But such worries felt distant now. Jennifer placed her phone on the table and lay down in bed. Believing another happy day would begin tomorrow, she closed her eyes. The phone's ring shattered the midnight silence. Jennifer reached for her bedside phone with clouded consciousness. Outside, cold rain beat against the windows, and occasional strong winds made the house creak. Michael breathed steadily beside her. The digital clock showed 2 a.m. An unknown number displayed on the screen. Usually, she would ignore it, but midnight calls carried an inexplicable anxiety. The streetlight usually visible from the bedroom window was hazy tonight due to the rain. Feeling her fingertips trembling, Jennifer pressed the answer button. Hello. Mama, it's me, help me. She caught her breath. It was unmistakably Adrian's voice. But something seemed wrong. She could hear what sounded like a car engine in the background. Mixed with the rain, she thought she heard someone speaking softly. Adrian. What's wrong? Where are you? Mama. I'm scared. After his trembling voice cut off, the call ended. Had someone hung up, or had they gone out of range? She immediately tried calling back, but only got a mechanical voice saying, "This number is currently not in service." Another attempt yielded nothing but an empty dial tone. Jennifer sat up abruptly. The bedroom air suddenly felt cold. Her son should be sleeping upstairs. Why would he have a phone at this hour? And from an unknown number. Michael. Wake up. Please, wake up. When she desperately shook her husband's shoulder, Michael woke up. Even though he usually slept deeply, he responded immediately to his wife's tone. What's wrong? A call from Adrian, something's wrong. From an unknown number, but it was definitely his voice. He said, "Help me." Before she finished speaking, Michael jumped up. They hurried into the hallway. Their footsteps up the stairs seemed louder than usual. The wooden floor made ominous sounds. The family photos on the wall looked like strangers' memories. Jennifer touched the doorknob with trembling hands. Her heart was pounding. She had to open it. But she didn't want to. Such contradictory emotions washed over her. In her head, the voice from the phone call kept repeating. The door opened. The room was dark. but they immediately noticed something was wrong. The dinosaur wallpaper that usually brought comfort now cast eerie shadows. The curtains were swaying violently. The window was wide open, letting in cold wind and rain. Puddles had formed on the floor. Raindrops glistened between scattered toys. Dinosaur figures lay scattered like silent witnesses. Adrian. The bed was empty, its sheets disheveled. The red T-Rex plushie that he always slept with lay fallen by the pillow. The warm feeling of when she had handed it to him last night with a "good night" now felt like a distant memory. He's gone. Adrian is gone. In a panic, Jennifer searched the entire room. The closet, under the bed, under the desk. The usual hiding spots for hide and seek were now only sources of fear. He wasn't anywhere. "I'm calling 911. Michael shouted while pulling out his phone. Through the window, did someone come in? But why a second-floor window? Just then, they began to hear sirens in the distance. Was it coincidence, or had someone already called? The sound gradually grew closer. But to Jennifer's ears, it seemed to come from the ends of the earth. She collapsed to her knees while clutching the red T-Rex plushie. She could still feel her son's body warmth in it. The moonlight reflected in the wet floor wavered and distorted. Why? She could hear Michael talking to the 911 operator in the distance. Yes, a 4-year-old boy. Brown hair, blue eyes, last seen at bedtime around 8 p.m. The police sirens were getting closer. But her head was filled with just one voice. "Mama, it's me, help me." That voice froze her heart. That voice was unmistakably Adrian's. The room's air grew even colder. Outside, the rain intensified, and raindrops blew in through the open window. The sound of rain hitting the floor echoed like the ticking of time. Marking the broken daily life, the irretrievable reality. And suddenly, the doorbell rang. The police had arrived. "Mrs. Wilson." 2 uniformed officers stood at the entrance with flashlights. Their light illuminated the dark house. It felt unreal. Like a scene from a movie. But this wasn't a nightmare movie. Her son was gone. Someone had taken him. And that someone was a person who could either imitate Adrian's voice or make Adrian say things. Jennifer's mind flashed to that perfect makeup and long black hair. The recent unnatural behavior, the excessive interest in Adrian. But surely not. It couldn't be. She didn't want to believe it. Sirens echoed through the quiet residential streets of Eden Prairie. Like an announcement that the peaceful daily life would never return. "Could you tell us again about the phone call in detail?" Among the police officers gathered in the living room, a thin middle-aged man who introduced himself as Detective Johnson asked Jennifer in a quiet voice. Outside was still dark, and though the rain had lightened, the tension in the house showed no signs of easing. At 2 a.m., a call from an unknown number. Jennifer began speaking with a trembling voice. Michael placed his hand on her shoulder, gently supporting her. The police had already sent a forensics team upstairs to investigate Adrian's room. How long did the call last? 15 seconds, no, maybe 20 seconds. I heard what sounded like a car engine in the background. Just then, a forensics officer came downstairs. Detective Johnson, we found ladder marks outside the window. It appears someone used a ladder. The detective's expression tightened. Mrs. Wilson, your ladder. It's stored in the shed. The forensics officer immediately went to check the shed. A few minutes later, he returned shaking his head. The ladder was in its place. The kidnapper must have brought their own ladder. Evidence suggesting a premeditated crime was piling up one after another. At 5 a.m., they began canvassing the neighborhood. Uniformed officers went door to door along the dark streets. However, no residents had noticed any suspicious sounds or cars amid the night's rain. Mrs. Wilson, could we have a recent photo of your son? As she handed over the photo, yesterday's events raced through Jennifer's mind like a film strip. Picking him up from daycare. His smile at dinner. Reading bedtime stories. Everything had been such a normal, happy daily routine. As morning arrived, reporters began gathering in front of the house. Local TV and radio station vans arrived one after another. The Eden Prairie Police Department PIO began preparing for the first press conference. Jennifer stared blankly at her son's smiling face being broadcast on TV as camera flashes went off. At 9 a.m., a Child Protective Services representative arrived. The young female social worker began asking questions in a gentle tone. Have you noticed any recent changes in your child's behavior? Are there any issues in your family relationships? Each question made her feel like she was being blamed. But Jennifer told herself this was standard procedure. New reports came in from the police. Fingerprints collected from Adrian's bedroom window were being compared with their database. Meanwhile, investigators tracking suspicious call records had determined that the problematic phone number came from a disposable cell phone. Mrs. Wilson, Detective Johnson approached again. We've contacted your ex-husband and his wife. They say they're heading here now. At those words, Jennifer felt her heart stop for a moment. Carol. She was coming. The recent unnatural behavior flashed back like a flashback. But should she voice her suspicions? Without any solid evidence. Near noon, Adrian's father James arrived with his wife Carol. How could this happen? James was visibly distraught, firing questions at the police officers one after another. Beside him, Carol stood expressionless, wearing black sunglasses. What time did you go to bed last night? The detective asked Carol. Around 11 p.m. At our home in Minneapolis. Together? Yes, of course. Just then, Jennifer's cell phone rang. From an unknown number. The room's air froze. As police officers prepared to record, she nervously answered the phone. Hello. But the other end was wrapped in silence. She could faintly hear what sounded like someone breathing. Adrian. At that moment, the call ended. The police technical team immediately began tracing the call's origin. Behind Carol's sunglasses, Jennifer thought she saw something move. "We've received a report from an employee at Mirror Hills Supermarket. They've taken custody of a crying boy in the parking lot." At Detective Johnson's words, all eyes in the room focused on him. That location was near Carol's parents' home in Duluth. "We're checking the security camera footage. A boy who was let out of a black SUV." As his words trailed off, Carol stood up. "I need to use the restroom." As she tried to leave the room, an officer quietly blocked her path. "Mrs. Carter, could we talk a bit more?" The color drained from Carol's face. A bead of sweat rolled down from the edge of her sunglasses. A police technician pointed to a laptop screen. A black SUV parked in a dark parking lot. A woman getting out of the driver's seat, opening the back door. Even in the dim footage, that long black hair was unmistakable. "Mrs. Carter, could you explain this footage?" Carol remained silent, removing her sunglasses with slightly trembling hands. Her bloodshot eyes stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. I didn't hurt Adrian. I just wanted to see him." Just then, James, who had been giving a statement in another room, burst in. "Carol, what happened?" In front of her confused husband, Carol's defenses began to crumble completely. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Crying, she pulled something out onto the desk. It was a smartphone. "I made the phone call." Adrian's voice. "I used a recording." Tension ran through the investigation headquarters. Her confession had begun. Investigation revealed that Carol had been secretly recording Adrian's voice for the past 3 months. When visiting the flower shop, during visitations. And she had edited those recordings to create that midnight phone call. "After the fertility treatments failed, they said I couldn't have children anymore." Carol's voice trembled. "Adrian could have been my son." Further investigation revealed shocking facts one after another. Carol's social media was filled with photos portraying her as Adrian's real mother. She had been weaving a false family narrative. Her Instagram had over 200 posts tagged "My Precious Son" in the past 6 months. "Mrs. Carter, you were seeing a psychiatrist, weren't you?" At the detective's words, Carol slowly nodded. Schizophrenia medication was found in her bag. The prescription was dated 2 months ago. However, the medication showed no signs of ever being taken. "Why didn't I notice?" James covered his face with both hands. The fact that he, the husband closest to Carol, hadn't noticed her changes would likely continue to haunt him deeply. At 3 p.m., word came from Duluth police. A search warrant had been issued for Carol's parents' house. In the basement, they found Adrian's personal items one after another. Daycare drawings. Used paper cups. And most shocking was the existence of a space that perfectly recreated Adrian's bedroom. The same dinosaur wallpaper. The same bed cover. Even the toys were all identical. It was a premeditated preparation, wasn't it? At Detective Johnson's quiet words, the room fell into heavy silence. That abnormal obsession was clear to everyone's eyes. But why now? Jennifer asked with a trembling voice. The answer was in Carol's smartphone. She had received the results of her final fertility treatment the day before the incident. The doctor's message saying, "Pregnancy is no longer possible," had triggered everything. Excessive attachment to Adrian. Failed fertility treatments. Untreated schizophrenia. These factors had intertwined to create this distorted plan. "Please let me see Adrian," Carol pleaded tearfully. But the police officers quietly shook their heads. "Mrs. Carter, you're under arrest for the kidnapping of a minor." At 4 p.m., in the car heading to Mirror Hills supermarket where Adrian was being held, Jennifer caught her breath. Why the supermarket? The reason had become clear. According to Carol's confession, Adrian had complained of hunger. However, hesitating to take him to her parents' house, she decided to let him out in the supermarket parking lot. Perhaps at the last moment, her conscience had worked. "Michael, I should have noticed then," Jennifer murmured from the passenger seat. How Carol's visits to the flower shop increased, how her interest in Adrian was abnormal. "No one could have predicted this," Michael answered while driving. "What matters is what comes next." As they approached the parking lot, Jennifer's heartbeat quickened. She could see ambulance lights. And beside them, a small figure. Adrian. Hearing his mother's voice, the boy turned around, his face breaking into a relieved smile. "Mama." Jennifer couldn't stop crying as she embraced her running son. Adrian looked tired but showed no signs of serious injury. Though his red T-Rex plushie was missing, he seemed energetic. While being examined by paramedics, Adrian began speaking in fragments. "Aunt Carol came through the window, said she had new toys." Within his childlike innocent words lay traces of a planned abduction. Adrian had been lured out the window by the promise of new toys, his pure child's heart trusting adults. The paramedic who finished the examination approached Jennifer. "There are no physical issues. However, he may need care for psychological trauma." Jennifer nodded while embracing her son tightly once more. Michael joined them, and the family of three shared a long embrace. Just then, the sky suddenly brightened. The thick rain clouds parted, and the sun peeked through for the first time in a while. As if awakening from a long nightmare. In the police vehicle, Carol was quietly crying. James's expression as he watched her mixed anger, sadness, and sympathy. "Ma'am," Detective Johnson approached. "We'll need to take a formal statement and file a victim report." Interrupting those words, Adrian suddenly asked a question. "Mama, why is Aunt Carol crying?" No one could immediately answer his innocent question. Jennifer gently stroked her son's hair, carefully choosing her words. "Aunt Carol needs to take a rest for a while. But you haven't done anything wrong." The spring sunlight fell warmly on mother and child. Adrian started talking again. About dinosaurs. The normal, ordinary, irreplaceable daily life was slowly beginning to return. Good morning, Adrian. Minnesota's morning sun streamed into the kitchen. 6 months after the incident, in September, the street trees were beginning to change color, announcing autumn's arrival. Good morning, Mama. Today's the dinosaur field trip, right? Adrian's eyes sparkled as he gripped his cereal spoon with both hands. The daycare had organized a special trip to the Science Museum of Minnesota's exhibition, World of Dinosaurs. Since that day, Adrian had been visiting a child psychologist once a week. Children recover from trauma faster than adults, the counselor had said. However, he still sometimes had nightmares in the middle of the night. Michael, Papa, are you coming home early today? Yes, I promised. It's a special day, Michael answered while drinking his coffee. Today was also the day Carol's sentence would be handed down. After the incident, the facts revealed by the investigation were more serious than expected. Carol had shown early symptoms of schizophrenia 2 years ago but hadn't received proper treatment. The failure of fertility treatments and the resulting psychological stress had contributed to worsening her symptoms. Before sentencing, expert psychiatric evaluation was conducted. As a result, Carol was determined to have committed the crime in a state of diminished capacity. The prosecution was seeking mandatory treatment at a specialized medical facility rather than prison time. Jen, are you okay? Michael asked worriedly. Yes. I was just thinking. If we had noticed Carol's changes back then. At that moment, Adrian grabbed his mother's hand. Mama, don't cry. A child's kindness brought tears to her eyes. Indeed, everyone had regrets. James continued to blame himself for not noticing his wife's changes. The local community also reflected on whether there had been any signs. However, along with Adrian's recovery, people were beginning to look forward. Jen's Flowers had also reopened after a temporary closure. Regular customers offered kind words. PTA mothers took turns helping at the shop. The church community delivered home-cooked meals. Oh my, look at the time! Jennifer exclaimed, glancing at the wall clock. Adrian, we need to hurry. While fixing her son's hair, she glanced at the entrance. The green lamp of the newly installed home security system blinked quietly. Since that day, security awareness had increased in the neighborhood. Twice as many residents now attended the regular neighborhood watch meetings. We're off. Adrian bounded out, clutching his new red T-Rex plushie. Though the previous one never returned, Michael had found the same kind. Arriving at daycare, the teacher greeted them warmly. They too had been watching over Adrian's changes. Mrs. Wilson, we heard about today's sentencing. Please take care. In the car heading to the courthouse, memories of the spring incident flashed by like a film strip. The midnight phone call. The open window. And the reunion in the supermarket parking lot. The courtroom was filled with those involved. James was there too. He was proceeding with divorce from Carol. All rise. The courtroom fell silent as the judge entered. Defendant Carol Carter. After careful deliberation, the court pronounces the following sentence. Carol stood with her eyes downcast. Gone was her once perfect makeup and well-groomed black hair. Taking into account the defendant's diminished responsibility due to mental impairment, the court sentences her to 3 years of mandatory treatment in a medical prison. After the sentencing, Carol turned toward Jennifer for the first time. "I'm sorry." Those words carried sincere remorse. Outside, the autumn sunlight was bright. "It's finally over," Jennifer sighed deeply. In the afternoon, when she went to pick up her son at the Science Museum, Adrian came running up with sparkling eyes. "Mama!" The Tyrannosaurus bones were life-sized. Her son's innocent smile warmed her heart. In the evening, stopping by the flower shop, ordered bouquets were lined up. Arrangements for weddings and hospitals. And one small bouquet. It was to be delivered to the medical facility where Carol would be confined. "I wonder if this is right," Jennifer hesitated but added a card. "Wishing for your recovery." Returning home, Michael had started preparing dinner. A new dinosaur drawing by Adrian decorated the table. "Hey, why don't we eat in the garden tonight?" Michael suggested. "It's been a while since we've watched the stars." The early autumn breeze was pleasant, and the family's laughter around the garden table echoed through the quiet residential area. Adrian, with his new T-Rex on his lap, started talking about dinosaurs again. His voice seemed to announce that a new normal had returned to this house and to the town, along with certain hope. The smartphone on the table lit up. A message from the hospital. Regarding Adrian's next counseling session. Looking at the screen, Jennifer was thinking. The wounds hadn't completely healed yet. But maybe that was natural. What mattered was moving forward, one step at a time. In the sky, autumn constellations began to shine. And this family's story too was beginning to turn to a new page.